warm-up. Let's take our feet nice and wide. Insteps parallel. Let's reach up, trying to touch the ceiling, straightening out one side of the body, then the other side of the body, down that side seam. Maybe holding both arms up, looking up, checking that the weight is pitched forwards onto the balls of your feet. Maybe get those hands twiddling and let them just drop down, elbows into your sides, lengthen the arm, take the chin down onto your chest and take a wonderful roll down, all the way down to the floor, mobilising through every single vertebrae. When you're there, nod the head, shake the head, wiggle the shoulders around, take a little shift from side to side with your weight, just noticing, checking out how the body is. And then we're rolling back up. Let's get those fingers moving again, pushing the pubic bone forwards, unravelling through the spine all the way to the top. Let's do that one more time. Just 4 reaches up, starting with your non-dominant side. So you'll notice, if you think about it, you always reach up with the same arm. For me, it's my right arm. So this time I started with my left hand, but I've done loads more than 4. I'm going to get those fingers twiddling. I'm closing my eyes this time. How does that spine feel? Taking the chin onto the chest, keeping the fingers going, highlighting the extremities, making me a little bit more aware of what's going on in my body, hanging from the waist. I'm just going to take a slightly straight leg, hamstring stretch, wiggling about a bit from side to side, and then strongly tucking the pelvis under, pushing the pubic bone forwards to unravel all the way through the spine up to the top and finishing there. Perfect. Let's get our shoulders rolling. Double shoulder rolls. All the way backwards. As big a movement as you can in that shoulder joint. And then all the way forwards. Might be some clunking and clicking going on. That's absolutely fine. And then some singles. Trying to get some movement in the rib cage. Rotational movement in the rib cage, keeping the head facing forwards, which means your spine is going to face forwards and stay in the middle. So there's no leaning, there's no changing of the shape of the spine. Square to the front. I've changed direction. I'm coming forwards with those shoulder rolls. What have we got next? Doubles forwards and forwards, singles backwards and forwards. Finishing off here with a low figure of 8. As I'm doing this one, so I'm drawing a figure of 8 with the sort of my fingertips, keeping the arms quite low. Think about your collarbone from one side of your shoulder to the other. And I feel like I'm rounding it. I'm rounding it forwards and I'm rounding it backwards. When I'm standing in good tall posture, that's a nice straight line. It's like, I haven't actually got any of those things. Oh, okay, this would work. My melt half roll, a little plug there for melt. When I'm standing in good posture, my shoulders are square and level. The collarbone is in a really nice straight line. I'm trying to round the shoulders forwards and then round them back again the other way, as seen from above, if that makes sense. So as I'm taking the shoulders forwards, I'm not hugely exaggerating. This is just shoulders. So the shoulder tips, the ends of the collarbone, creating more of a semicircle by turning the hands around. Excellent. We are going to take a push and pull. Now we're focusing much more on the rib cage. Pushing the hands forwards, pushing the ribs back, and then pulling the elbows back. Pushing and pulling. As I'm doing this as well, I'm turning to the side just so that you can see. I feel like I want to bend my knees and I want to take a slight pelvic tilt. When I pull the elbows back, I'm trying to lift the chest. Essentially, we're shifting the rib cage forwards and backwards. And then a similar thing, but now extending the arms. I call this butterfly arms. We're drawing a longer figure of 8 on both sides. And again, those hands are turning and changing. Remember, you're trying to go beyond your everyday movement. So this might feel a little bit uncomfortable. There might be some creaks and some clunks going on, but that's absolutely fine. Let's take some rib cage circles. First of all, just reaching out to the side, shifting the rib cage from side to side as you shift your weight from side to side. And then we've already taken the rib cage forwards and backwards, so now we can circle the ribs, hopefully. I tend to put my hands on my hips in an attempt to keep them fairly still. They're moving a little bit, that's absolutely fine. Otherwise, shifting that box of your rib cage around. You've got the box of the pelvis, the box of the rib cage, the box of the head and shoulders. They all sit on top of each other, but we're shifting that middle one around. Brilliant. Pop your hands on your ribs now, so keep the rib cage box still as you circle the hips around. I'm getting very warm already. It's actually a really lovely hot day here today, but getting nice and warm with these movements. It is a great way to warm your body up and just get the blood flow going. I've changed direction a couple of times. And then I'm going to bring my feet and knees together, put my fingertips on my knees, and I'm turning sideways to show you. My back is in its natural curves. Squeezing the knees together, circling around all the way. There's the postman. Circling the other way. The focus here is keeping the knees at the same height, which is why we're touching fingertips to knees. And look at all that lovely movement in the feet, the ankles, the toes. Try and get that to happen as well. So that we're preparing for every eventuality going on in those feet. And just again getting the blood flow there. Perfect. Some side stretches. Let's go fingertips to temples and just reaching over. This is quite strong. If that's too much with the hands up here, just have your arms down by your side. Stretching that side seam. Taking the head over with you as well. You could add the arm, could take the arms out and then cross them in front, cross the lower one in front of your body, staying really sideways. Keeping the legs still, the hips still, feet equally weighted for this one. Brilliant. And then finishing off with a little bit of spine articulation. I'm going to turn sideways again, so I keep deciding which way I'm going to face sideways. We're going to lift the chest, we're going to stick the bottom out, place your hands on your legs and relax all the way down and then roll back up. Lift the chest, so this is a chest lift. Relax the head last, followed by a back lift, lifting up in that upper back. One more of those, chest lift. And a back lift. Hands are on the legs, fingers facing in, elbows out to the side, just to give your spine a little bit of support. Let's take a similar thing, but in a different order. So taking the chin down onto the chest, rounding the spine, and then lifting the back. This time the head initiates the movement, rounding the spine, arching the back to come up. One more. Round and arch to come back up. Brilliant. So let's just do some little walks around. So this is our general warm-up. Walking on the balls of the feet. If you don't do anything else, maybe just try just doing this little set of exercises every day. At some point in the day, you don't have to do it all in one go. I think we've only been about 10 minutes. I'm walking around on my heels now. I was staggering a little bit then, but again, that's fine. Change your direction a little bit, but draw a circle with your heels. Change it up. Don't always be walking forwards and backward. Don't always keep everything in our square frame. I'm going to the outside edge of my feet. What I like to do here, and this is a little bit weird, but I like to really pull my big toes up, and then at the same time I sort of want to do a thumbs up. Just seems right. Both ends working in harmony with each other, if you like. And this is sort of the orangutan move. Checking it out, getting my ankles really tolerant to being in different positions. Last one, and I don't have a thing for the hands here, although it does make you feel like you want to roll in. It's not very pleasant. On the big toes, I'm on the big toes and let my ankles collapse in or roll in. But actually it's making them stronger in this position, which is good. Knees are rolling in, opening up sacroiliac joint a little bit. Always smaller steps with this stuff, and I'm just exploring how does that feel. But now I feel like I've sort of mobilised everything a little bit. I'm just going to do some finger twiddles just as I'm walking around, thinking about my lengthened spine, my new awareness of where I am in space, which is what this is all about. Okay, great. We are going to move on to some mini hip hinges. I'm going to place my hands, I'm going to have my feet hip width apart, so not too wide. Span the hands across the torso so that you're checking that the rib cage is connected to the hips. My spine is in its natural curves. I'm going to stick my bottom out behind me, hinge at the hips, which is what it says on the tin. It does what it says on the tin, this one. It's a hip hinge, it's a mini hip hinge, so we're not going very low. Shutting the drawer, shutting the door behind you with your bottom. You've got your hands full, you've got a tray of, let's say, tea and cake, or you might be going to Japan, whereby you're going to be doing lots of bowing and you need to protect your back as you're doing that. So we're here. That is part of the movement. So combined with the shoulder, we've had a little think about the collarbone and the shoulders and that hip hinge movement. Two very important things to do a good sit to stand. Let's look at a shoelace lunge, which combines taking one leg back and going to kneel down onto the floor with that leg and hinging at the hip, taking the hands to the floor to do your shoelaces and then coming up. So this is an extreme version of the hip hinge, and also we're taking our lunge position. Ideally you want to take the knee far enough back. The ideal lunge, the perfect lunge, is two 90-degree angles of the legs, and then if we were doing a static lunge we would stand up from there. A static lunge with an upright body, straight down, straight up. We're adding on to that static lunge the hip hinge. It's an extreme hip hinge all the way forwards to the point where it makes my back flatten out a little bit. That's absolutely fine. But I'm trying to keep it as neutral as possible. But I'm coming down into that 90-degree angle. That's the key part. And then taking the weight forwards onto that front leg to come up. So hopefully you might not need hardly any pressure on that back, on those back toes. Because I'm coming straight back up, I'm leaving my toes curled under. But I could relax, I could change legs, and then we're coming forwards on the other leg, and I don't even need that back foot to be, those toes to be curling under. Great, okay, just a little bit of extra movement there. Thinking about the shoelace lunges. Let's carry on mobilising the hips. As I said, this class is sit to stand, but it's also working towards a deep squat. For a deep squat, you need mobile, healthy hips and nice and warm hips. So let's stand on one leg. I'm going to go sideways first of all. Just swinging the leg. If you can't swing, that's absolutely fine. Just tap the toe forwards and backwards. Maybe pop your hands on your hips. If you need a little bit of support, put your hand on a wall or the back of a chair or something close by. The idea, if you can stand without any extra help, put one hand in front, one hand behind on your tummy and your lower back, and check that as you do this movement, there's no change in your pelvis. So as I swing my leg back, I can feel my buttocks activating, and that's absolutely fine. But what isn't happening, this isn't happening. So my pelvis isn't joining in with that leg. This is, I've discovered a new little metaphor for this, analogy for this. We are a Barbie doll. So Barbie doll, the torso, pubic bone to shoulders, is fixed. It's a solid piece of plastic, if you like. There's no movable pelvis. Not in my original ones when I was a girl, quite some time ago, might add. But the legs hinged at the hip. That's what we want. We can move the leg forwards and backwards, but it doesn't actually affect the torso whatsoever. Let's change sides, change legs, just for the forwards and backwards movement. Using a bit of support if you need to. Keeping one hand on the lower back, or one hand on the tummy, or placing your hands on your hips. Be very aware, is that going on? Probably more so when you take the leg back than when you take it forwards. Most of us have got quite a good range to the front, but not so much to the back. So we might cheat a little bit and collapse in that lower back, especially when you're quite lordotic like I am. You're quite a curve in that lower back, and also tight at the front of the hip. All the same sort of thing. Go back to your first leg. Let's take some circles. Practicing our one leg stand work as well. This is tough though, because we're on one leg, but we're also taking some big movements here. Ideally the hips, shoulders are facing front. There's a little bit of movement, but not much. I'm rotating this knee, taking the thigh outwards, across my midline all the way out. You can just put the foot down onto the floor in between each one. Do as big a movement, as big a circle with your kneecap as you can. Same leg if you can, reverse it, coming all the way in. This is tough on the standing leg. I'm standing on my weaker leg. That's almost become my stronger leg now, because I tend to stand on my right leg all the time, because I know it's my weaker leg and I'm conscious of it. I would say I've started to change that imbalance between, especially for one leg standing, not so much for the tightness in the hips, but and that's really doing a lot of work in there. There's a lot of blood flow now to that joint. That's going to really help if I want to do some deep squats. Let's change legs, crossing over the midline. Here's my midline, it's my spine. That kneecap is crossing over. It's going up as high as possible, out to the side as high as possible. Hips though, pretty much staying square to the front. My lower leg is relaxed. I'm letting it dangle. There's no tension there. And this side is already quite warm. I'm going to swap direction now. Because I was just standing on it, it's already worked quite a lot to stabilise. Circling the knee. You might find that you're hearing squelching, clunking. As long as it's not painful, try and work through it. One side will always be worse than the other for that. This side for me, it's actually okay today. Normally my left leg on the inwards circles would clunk every time. But because we've lifted the spine, we've lengthened the spine, we've lifted the rib cage off of the hips, hopefully that isn't happening too much. Great. Okay, wide leg hip hinge for hamstring stretches. Feet are parallel, legs are wider even than the shoulders. Pop the hands on the hips, or maybe just tuck your little finger in to that crease that is going to be the only bit that changes. Couple of those. Find your biting point for your hamstrings. Remember, if I go sideways, 90 degrees should be enough. The shape of my spine and the curve of the neck and everything, the shape of my spine all the way to the top of where I've put my hair up, is the same, whether I'm standing or whether I'm here halfway or whether I'm as far as I need to be to get my hamstring stretching. If you don't need to go any lower, but just be very aware that you're not cheating and letting those shoulders collapse. And what will also happen there, and this is something I was mentioning earlier, if you allow those shoulders to collapse, you've created that curve in your collarbone, which is what I was showing you earlier. So let's do a couple more. Pop your hands this time on the shoulders. Now pitch forwards. Be very aware that this collarbone is a straight line from side to side. That will help the hamstring stretch. Another thing which will help the hamstring stretch is to tip the weight forwards onto the balls of the feet so that you can tap the heels, and or slightly tweak your curve in your lower back, which will just take the stretch up a little bit higher into the top of the hamstrings. And just holding that there a moment and then coming up. Great, so we've stretched the backs of the legs. Let's turn the legs out this time into a ballet plie, a turned out position. Turning the legs out in the hip socket. Need to just pull your leggings up a little bit maybe. A bit more than that. And then these are going over the toes. I'm looking for perfect symmetry. I can see myself in my monitor. Hopefully you can see as well, my spine is going straight down the middle. Shoulders and hips are level, knees are level, thighs are level. My weight is equal between both feet, and then I'm straightening. Keeping the chest really nice and upright. So from the side, no change. It's like I've just lowered, I've just bent my knees. There's no pitching forwards, no rolling in of those knees, pinning them back. This might not be very comfortable for you, just go as far as you can. Absolutely, the golden rule here is knees go over the toes. Do not let those knees collapse in. Try not to let a hip hinge happen with that spine pitching forwards. Wonderful. We're going to take one last stretch here actually. Which is a nasty stretch but a good stretch. Coming down into that plie if you can. You're going to use between your elbow and your wrist, just on the inside of your knees, where I'm putting my hands now, and I'm going to use that place on my both arms to push my knees back, and then I'm going to take a little movement from side to side. It's very strong. It will always be strong. If you can, breathe, move from side to side. Take those hands down to the floor. Take your heels out so your legs are nice and parallel. If you would like to, one last little hamstring stretch. Maybe holding on to that lower leg, head towards the knee. Maybe swap to the other side. I feel like it's rude not to while we're here and all ready for it. Bring the heels in, bring the toes in, heels in, toes in, feet parallel, much closer in, and roll up through the spine to unravel. Great, for the next section you're going to need a chair. You may have already had a chair, I should have mentioned it earlier really. If you needed a bit of support for the leg swings, that would have worked. Great, so we're going to sit on a chair and we're going to get the pelvis moving. I'm going to go completely sideways to start. I'm going to swap and change a little bit, I think. So I've only got little legs and I have to have my heels up a little bit. Well, I can just about relax there. But in the sideways seated position, my spine is in its natural curves. This is quite a hard chair. I feel like I'm very conscious that I've got a hard wooden seat. I'm very conscious of where my sit bones are. My sit bones are driving a line. Imagine if your sit bones continued up through the body. So I've got 3 straight lines in my back. First one is the spine, absolutely in the centre, and then either sit bone, either side, drawing a straight line up and then straight down to the floor. We're going to take a pelvic tilt from here, drawing the belly button in really, really strongly, lifting pelvic floor. I'm trying not to just collapse. I'm trying to really scoop out that tummy, trying not to lose too much height, and just taking that curve in my lower back, trying to make that happen the other way. I feel like I've gone behind my sit bones. I feel like I've tilted my pelvis back so much that my sit bones are sort of drawing, my sit bones are pointing towards the back of my knee. That's quite a good image. And then sitting upright. Sit bones pointing towards the backs of my knees and coming upright. Let's take that pelvic tilt and let's go all the way round with the pelvis. Sitting at the front of your chair if you can. So we're tucking under, we're going round the outside edge of one sit bone, we're going forwards a little bit of both sit bones, crossing over to the other side. Round the outside edge and then behind them both. And a little bit like what we were doing earlier when we were, but it was a much bigger movement when we were mobilising the hips and the ribs. We're trying to focus on the pelvis, that's the pelvis box this time. Circling around and then going the other way. Head and shoulders, ribs are going along for the ride. This is a great movement to waken up the whole of your pelvic floor. Again, getting that blood flow to the hip, inside the hip. Great, okay, I'm going to turn my, actually I'm going to go back to the side again. We're going to do, so we're sitting really, really upright. We're going to take our arms back. This is a focus on the collarbone, staying nice and wide and straight as opposed to curved. That's a curved collarbone. That's a curved collarbone, but that probably wouldn't really happen. That's a neutral collarbone, a straight line from side to side. We're going to push the arms back, opening up the collarbone. If you imagine, generally when we're sitting and when we're not thinking about it too much, we've got a slight curve there because we allow everything to collapse down a little bit. Sitting up as tall as possible, pushing the backs of your hands behind you, turning your palms to face the wall behind you. Turn your palms to face the other way. So we've opened up the collarbone, turn the palms to face the other way. Bring the arms forwards, not very far, 45 degrees, and be aware that you haven't changed that collarbone straight line at all. Pushing back, turn the palms, bring forwards. So what we're trying to be very aware of is as you take the arm back, not allowing the top of that shoulder to tip forwards. We're opening back, and even here I'm not squeezing my shoulder blades together. I'm not trying to curve the shoulder, the tips of the shoulders back more. I'm not trying to take a curve that way. I'm just trying to open them up, almost lengthening out to the sides. Palms back, turn the palms, bring the arms forwards. Lengthening through the spine, being very aware of the sit bones, evenly weighted on the chair. Great, relax the arms a moment. Next thing we're going to do is our hip hinge. That's all we're going to do. So from the top of where my hair is up, the top of my head, to my sacrum, nothing changes. I hinge at the hips and then I come upright. Hinge at the hips and come upright. The best way to see this is with my trusty dowel. I don't get this out very often. So we're here. When I'm sitting upright, my hair's getting in the way slightly. Yeah.
So I'm sitting nice and upright. I've got contact at the base of my spine. I've got contact between my shoulder blades, and I've got contact at the back of my head. As I hinge forwards, none of those points of contact change at all. What we would naturally do as we stood up without thinking about it is do that. So now you can see the only point of contact is at my upper back, my rib cage. Head's dropped forwards, the shoulders have rounded forwards, lower back has collapsed, it's overextended. As opposed to, the only change, if I can hold it with one hand, is here. This is the bit that's changing, nothing else is changing. So that's our seated hip hinge. We're going to bring this into a sit to stand movement, but first of all, let's have a little look at your leg strength. I'm going to just bring the chair slightly on an angle. My feet are nice and wide, my toes are going out to the corners, my knees are going over my toes. I'm going to sit a little bit further back into the chair this time, because when we lower, you want to know that the chair's there and you're not going to miss the edge sort of thing, because that would be a disaster. Let's do that same thing that we just did. We're going to hover the bottom, hover the hips off of the floor. So sitting upright, push back with the arms, bring the arms forwards, take the hip hinge. My feet are quite close, my heels are quite close to the chair leg. All I'm going to do now is push down through my feet and push out with my knees and hold it. And then control sitting back down. That might not have worked for you. You might have crash landed to come down. You might not have been able to hold the hips off, hovering the hips off the chair. But if you can, try and work on it. Arms back, collarbone wide, collarbone stays wide. Hinge at the hips is the only thing that changes. Push down, push out. I'm pushing towards the little toe side of my feet. And then sitting and releasing. Let's now stand all the way up. Arms go back, arms go forwards. You hinge forwards. You push down and out, and you just stand. You simply stand. It feels so easy when you get into this rhythm. Bearing in mind, you're not going to do it as in such a military way. It's easy for me to say. In everyday life, but we're in our class. We're trying to practice the perfect movement so that it becomes second nature. Sitting down, slightly different in the sense that you've got to send that bottom back. That's where the hip hinge comes in. We're opening up the collarbone, we're standing tall, turning the palms forwards. This is the moment where we hinge at the hips, we send the bottom back. The weight goes into the heels. I've controlled my lowering onto the chair, and then I just upright my spine. Arms go back, arms go forwards. Hinge, push down through the feet, push out. Arms go back, arms forwards. Hinge, send the bottom back. You find the edge of the chair, hopefully, with the back of your thighs before your bottom finds it. And then sit nice and upright. Let's do two more. Arms back, arms forwards, push down, stand up. Arms back, arms forwards, hinge, stick that bottom out and come upright. One more. Arms back, arms forwards, push down, stand up. That feels so good when you've got it all under control, sitting down and upright. Brilliant. Okay, so that was the least elegant, if you like. We've got our legs nice and wide. We're thinking John Wayne. We're coming up. Everything stay nice and wide. You could be here, so in a more parallel stance. In fact, let me go to the corner. Same thing. Arms back, arms forwards, hinge forwards, stand up. You're ready to walk up out of that chair. Same thing when you're sitting down. Just check your position if you have moved away. Arms back, arms forwards, hinge. So there's that shoelace lunge almost. Swap the legs over if you're trying this one. Arms back, arms forwards, hinge, stand up. And the nice thing about this, you've got a little bit of help from that back leg. Put the leg behind again. arms back, arms forwards, hinge. I've got a bit wobbly on this side, all the way down. Wasn't quite sure where the chair was there. Another way to do this is to keep the chair facing forwards. Just turn slightly to the corner. So we were here. Let's take out the arms moving backwards and forwards now, but just apply the principle. We were here. You're turning slightly to the corner. Hinge forwards. Don't let your back collapse. Push down through that front foot especially. Send your bottom back, and you've got that back hand to help you find the chair seat. Turn to the other side. On the diagonal, hinge forwards, push down through that front foot. Keep that foot there. You could release the other one, go back again, so that you know where you are in relationship to the chair. Hinge backwards, find the chair with that back hand, sit on the edge, and you're down without collapsing anything. Brilliant. Okay, that was our sit to stand. The whole of today's class is about the sit to stand, but also working towards that deeper squat. Actually, the rules apply, the same rules apply. If we've got a deeper squat going down towards the floor, I'm going to go sideways in order to sit down. If we were to do that same exercise, arms back, arms forwards, bend the knees, send the bottom back. There's that bit of extra going on in that hip joint because it's deep, it's low, and it's also quite soft. Push the arms back, push the arms forwards, push the weight down through the feet, pushing the knees out as well. You might just go straight into it. You might keep your arms in front. So the reason we bring the arms in front is because it counterbalances. This might be too low, that actual depth might be too low. Try and find something that's similar but put some cushions on it or something. Maybe your settee is the perfect height. It's a little bit lower than your average chair. So that's what we're working towards with that deep squat. Brilliant. We are coming down to the floor. I will see you there, and we will be on all fours just for a change. Okay, so we are down on the floor on all fours. Fingertips facing forwards, knees underneath the hips, knees hip width apart, your spine again in its natural curves. All we're going to do from here is just take the hips gently back towards the heels and rocking forwards a little bit. Moving your spine again, hinging at the hip. Moving your spine forwards and backwards without changing its shape because the focus is hinging at the hip. Turn your fingertips out to the corners, or your fingers, sorry, out to the corners slightly. As you come forwards, I encourage you to come a little bit more forwards than normal. Just stress the wrists slightly. Fingers out to the sides now. Hinging forwards and backwards. Feeling the different pressure through hands and wrists as you change the position. Fingers facing the back corner towards you. This will get a little bit more challenging. You might be feeling quite a strong stretch down the forearm. And then for the last one, bring your fingertips, and we're forgetting about well actually my spine is still in neutral, but fingers facing your knees and quite close to your knees. This time as you come forwards there isn't too much stress, but as you take your hips back towards your heels, still trying to maintain that neutral spine, getting that lovely stretch from your heel of your palm all the way up to the inside of your elbow, the crease of your elbow. And maybe just holding that there a little bit. I'm just moving very gently from side to side as I read my notes. But also because that's how I like to stretch. Find the biting point and then move around within it. Try and relax a bit within it. That's how you increase the stretch, that's how you increase your tolerance of the amount of stretch that's going on. Just a few tarantulas to finish that one off. Great, let's come down onto our back. We're looking at doing some bridging. When we were doing the sit to stand on the chair, you hopefully were aware of the amount of power that's needed in the back of the legs, the buttocks, the back line of the body, to help you straighten and stand those legs, and also to help you do the hovering bit off of the chair. So let's take some straight bridges all the way up. Feet and knees hip width apart, hands underneath the backs of the knees, there's our pelvic tilt we were doing earlier, everything all tying in together all the time. Come into your base position, thinking about the shape of your spine. The natural curves of the spine are there. You're in a neutral pelvis, you know that pubic bone and hip bones are on the same plane, your lower back is in its natural curve. You've got the natural curve at the nape of the neck. Close your eyes, have a little, maybe a bit of a wiggle about. Check out your ribs at the back. Are they all lifted off of the floor, or can you relax and soften them? If you soften and make as many of your ribs at the back in contact with the floor as possible, your ribs at the front will be relaxed, connected, not flaring. If you're here, you're not in a neutral spine. If you're here, you're in a good neutral spine, opening up that collarbone as well. Keep the feet nice and close to your hips, insteps parallel in a good line, feet and knees are hip width apart. Let's open up the arms, place the backs of the hands on the floor, open up that collarbone, push down a little bit in the backs of your hands, push down through your feet, activate the buttocks, lift your hips up as high as you can, and then lower, still with the buttocks activated. So all the way up to the top. I'm not relaxing, I'm not collapsing when I come down. I'm firing up the back line of the body. I'm making it work on the way up and on the way down. My hips are brushing the mat, but I'm staying in my neutral. You could almost say you're hinging here. Upper body is staying exactly where it is. The head and shoulder girdle are staying where they are, but the rest of the torso is hinging from that point. This hinge at the hips that we've talked about a lot, is opening up now. We want that to happen. Maybe, and hopefully, fingers crossed, from the standing work with the leg circles, standing on one leg, you've actually woken up your buttocks a little bit in doing that. Hopefully in the sit to stand movement, you've again woken up the buttocks, the back line of the body. But if you haven't, now is the time. Now it's going to start to work. Let's cross one leg over. I'm going to take my camera leg and cross it over. Yeah. Oh, and just notice that. So I've taken my ankle across my other knee. I want you to really try and stay in a good neutral spine, especially with your pelvis. This side is my tighter side for my hip, which is why I went ooh. And to cross that ankle over the knee, it's not uncomfortable, and I can do it. I just know it's tighter than my other side. I just want this knee to actually be quite relaxed, or this leg to be quite relaxed. I definitely don't want it to distort anything. And then we're going to take some single leg bridges, pushing down into the other foot. At the moment, you probably, I would imagine the foot that's on the floor is still opposite your hip. But notice whether you moved it. If you moved it, you will have moved it into the centre. Keep it opposite your hip, not opposite your pubic bone. That's called cheating. And then we're lifting up. So now we're taking a single leg, a one-sided bridge. Much harder on the side of the foot that's on the floor. We're trying to get the hips up as high as they were just now when both feet were down. We're trying to keep those hips absolutely level, trying not to let the ribs flare. This should be quite hard work. Staying on the same side if you can, hips up to the top. Extend that leg up to the top, straight up to the ceiling. Give me a straight leg, it doesn't matter if it's not 90 degrees. From here, pulse. Push down 5 times through that foot that's on the floor, through that buttock. Try and put your big toe on the ceiling. Between 5 and 8 actually, I've done 8 now. Then we're going to add a bigger, much bigger movement. You're going to flex that foot at the top. You're going to lower the hips and the leg with a flexed foot all the way down to the floor. You're going to point the foot and lift back up. Let's do 5 of these, all the way down to the floor, hips and leg. So we've got that long lever of the leg, lifting and lowering. The buttock on the side of the foot that's on the floor should be having a little scream now. One more, I think I might have miscounted. I might have done 6 there. True. Bend that back in. Push the hips up one more time and come back down. Have a little hug of those knees or whatever feels like the thing that you should do. Whatever it is in your body, that will be the right thing to do. This for me is absolutely, I automatically want to do this. So I'm hugging my knees in, I'm circling them round, so I'm giving my lower back a bit of a massage, and it's also stretching out that buttock that I was working quite hard there. Okay, let's do all of that on the other side. Before you change sides though, especially if you've just joined me with that stretch, feet hip width apart. Do not put the other foot in the centre of your body. Cross the other ankle over. Oh, no. See, normally that's quite, it's much more, it's looser than the other side, which is tighter. But because I've just worked it, it's now going, so this is also a bit of a stretch. You may be feeling that, you might not. Essentially, foot across the ankle if you can. You could hold the leg in the air, but that would be holding a bit of tension in the muscles. I just want that leg out off the floor, out of the way, without any distortion to your body. And then we're pushing down on the other foot, activating the other buttock, checking that your hips are level. The side with the knee up that's off the floor, that hip will want to drop, and potentially you might be shortening or doing something strange on that side, or even the other side, just to get into this position. So go wherever you're comfortable. This leg isn't the important one. The leg that's crossed over isn't the important one. It's the leg that's on the floor and the fact that your torso is the same as before. There's my first rhyme of class today. Pushing down, activating the buttock, keeping it pretty much switched on all the way down as well. Be mindful, I'm going a bit fast. I can't remember whether I said how many to do of these, I don't think I did. Okay, I think I've had enough of that one now. Hips are staying up, leg is going up to the ceiling. Between 5 and 8 pulses. Oh, this is strong. 3, 4, 5, keep those hips level. 6, 7, 8. This knee wants to roll out. I'm trying to keep that foot parallel, the knee parallel. Flexing the foot, lowering the whole leg and the hips down to the floor. Pointing the foot, lifting back up. Try not to kick the leg. Smoothly lift, like you're working through treacle. 5 of these. 2 more. Woo, buttocks are on fire now. Not sure whether that was 3 or not. I'm going to do 1 more. I'm going to bend that foot in. Place the foot down. Can you get, yes, good. I've got so much more activation now. And now I can lift those hips even higher. I can drop my ribs down even lower. And coming down however you would like to. Woo, hugging those knees in again. Circling them around. Massaging out that lower back. Great. A set of abdominals involving flexing and pointing the feet. Oh, we're going to straighten the legs out for this one. Arms are up to the ceiling. When your arms are up to the ceiling and your fingers are up or your hands are up, your toes are up. So hands up to the ceiling, toes up to the ceiling, feet are flexed. The soles of your feet need to be nice and flat, the same as if you were standing on your feet. Feet are hip width apart. Your spine ideally is in a perfect neutral. When we lower the arms, we're going to point the feet. And even here, my feet are parallel, my insteps are parallel. My big toes haven't gravitated towards each other. It's a really straight line there. Just lowering the arms to the floor, lifting the arms back up, toes up. Lower the arms, 4 of these. Lift the arms, lift the toes. Pointing the feet when the arms are down, flexing the feet when the arms are up. One more. I'm going to add an abdominal curl when I lower my arms and point my feet. It helps me now to reach my fingertips towards my toes, clearing those shoulder blades. Nothing has changed in that centre. It actually feels really nice and strong. Lowering the head, lifting the arms up, flexing the feet. And again, 3 more. A breath out would be good when you come up. Breath in when you lower. I'm rubbish at counting as always. We're going to stay on one side. I'm going to use my camera leg as on that first leg. We're going to stay on the camera leg for 2 sets, 2 movements. First one is going to be a knee fold. As you come up for that abdominal curl, clear the shoulder blades, pointing the feet, reaching fingertips towards the arms, pelvis is in neutral, knee is directly above the hip, flexing the feet, head down, arms up, and here we go. 3, I'm going to count this time. 2, last one. This time I'm lifting a straight leg, same side, pointing the feet, flexing the feet to lower, pointing the feet, flexing to lower. All the same rules are applying. 2 more, last one, here we go. And down, stay there for a moment, have a little check of everything. We're taking the 4 knee folds and the 4 straight leg raises on the other side. Here we go. Breath out. Be really accurate with your positioning. Fingertips reaching towards the toes, knee above the hip. 1 more of this variety. Think about the shape of your lower back. Keeping that leg straight now, pointing the feet, flexing the feet. Remember, the soles of your feet are parallel to the wall opposite, as if you were standing. I think that was maybe the last one. I'm going to do 1 more for luck. And lower, and have a little collapse. The neck will have suffered a little bit because there was no support there, but hopefully not too much. Just let that head roll from side to side. I feel the need to circle my ankles as well, my feet at the ankles, because my shins are a little bit stressed with all that flexing and pointing, but all good toning and working the muscles. Brilliant. We are finishing off on our tummies. Coming back to a little bit of this opening up of the collarbone from lying on your tummy with your legs nice and straight. Let's take the legs together and let's squeeze them together. So no turn out. I always want to turn out here, have my heels together and my toes apart. Absolutely together, squeeze them together from the outside in. Have the tip of your nose touching the floor, backs of the hands on the floor. In fact, relax everything, but have your legs together to start with. Tip of the nose touching the floor. Make sure when you first went onto your tummy that you connected your rib cage to your hips. Because we've come from this position, ribs could be a little bit flared. Draw them down. Arms are by your side, backs of the hands on the floor. Relax your arms completely. In fact, relax your legs a little bit as well. So we're just lying on our tummy. Let your whole body relax. Hopefully you can feel that your shoulder tips, the front of your shoulders, are actually touching the floor and equal on both sides. You might not, that's absolutely fine. But try and notice whether they're equal on both sides. Just try and relax them forwards. That's what this movement is about. We're going to set the legs, set that lower tummy, squeezing the legs together. I'm squeezing my inside thighs. I've lifted pelvic floor. I'm drawing my belly button away from the floor. So I've set that lower abdominal. There's nothing really has changed in my upper body. Now I'm just going to lift my shoulder tips. Maybe lifting the back of the head and neck slightly. If the tip of your nose is touching the floor, you're a tiny bit too far forwards. Lift the back of the head and neck. Shoulder tips lifted. So now we've got that lovely straight line from shoulder to shoulder that's parallel to the floor. Only allow your shoulder tips to round forwards, create a curve, and then lift them back up again. Allow them to relax and round forwards and lift them back up again. I'm working quite hard on the rest of my body. I'm squeezing my legs together. My inside thighs are shaking a little bit. The back of my head and neck, I'm building the endurance there to have the head in the correct position. And at the same time, moving the collarbone. Sort of allowing it to collapse forwards and then opening it out without too much lifting of the elbows. Try and have your arms really heavy. This is quite strong. Great. Let's take the arms out to the side of your body with your palms down. Let's stay exactly where we are. So everything really is starting to quiver a little bit now. I'm going to lift my whole arms off the floor. My fingertips are just touching the floor. And then I'm going to now lift the whole arm up and lower to touch my fingertips to the floor. Lift the whole arm nice and straight. I'm not squeezing my shoulder blades together. This is just a stronger version almost of what we just did. We're not thinking so much about the collarbone, we're thinking about the muscles around the back of the shoulder, and my arms are shaking now, which are helping me lift that long lever of the arms. Woo! Brilliant. And collapse and relax. Wonderful. As always, a bit of a wiggle about on all fours. What do you instinctively feel like doing? I'm going to do some spine circles, both directions, vertical ones, horizontal ones. I'm going to curl my toes under, lift my hips up into a nice down dog walk. Rolling through the ankles, stretching my calves, maybe taking a little bit of side to side action, moving, crossing the legs over for a sexy bear, walking backwards. I'm going to walk all the way backwards. Again, this is just what I feel like doing. Listen to your body, do what you feel like. I'm going to have, oh, that's a new one. I'm going to have a bit of a sway, like a pendulum sway from side to side. That just feels great right now. And then I'm going to come back down onto my knees, because if I stand I'll probably be out of the camera shot, so that I can say thank you so much for joining me, and I hope to see you again soon.